Welcome to the Fund2000.com real estate podcast. Today we're welcoming Doug, our local homeless advocate. It's been about a year since we've gotten the update from Doug. Last time we spoke, we were talking about one of his friends that we were able to meet, and we did a video about him. His name is Lloyd. But we also did a video about Tina and the homeless encampment as well. So you found Lloyd in that camp, but there were other people you were helping as well. And I think that camp is no longer...
Yes, they disbanded that camp back in October of last year.
Have you been in touch with Tina at all?
No, I have not. I'm not sure where she went. There's a few others that I've seen kind of on my rounds. One gentleman, Ira, kind of another old timer over there, he's in the same apartment that Lloyd. That's our update. Lloyd got permanent housing. He got his HUD voucher, and it's a brand new facility. It's called Central Terrace. It's on 6th Street near Oxnard Boulevard. It's right across the street from the rescue mission.
Nice.
And it's a brand new apartment complex, and Lloyd's there and Ira, both from that same encampment in Oxnard by 5th Street and Harbor Boulevard.
Well, let's talk about Lloyd, because you've been helping him get that housing, but I'm also curious to know how you weren't helping Ira from the same starting point as you did Lloyd. How does the process compare for the two of those guys?
I think it was similar in that they went to the county one-stop and they got connected to services and a case manager for housing. So that path was similar. Ira pretty much did it on his own, whereas Lloyd had some help, and perhaps given some of the issues Lloyd deals with, he needed more help. He has severe breathing problems, he has dyslexia, so in his case having a homeless advocate was great for him, needing a bit more assistance.
Well, we got to meet Lloyd a couple different times, and I would agree, Lloyd needed the help. He was one of those people that if you did not go in and find him, and I know it was a bit of inspiration on your part, probably divine intervention for you to decide to ask that one day, is there anybody else? Mm-hmm. And there was somebody else, and that was Lloyd. And how did you find him originally? Yeah,
I had been going out there for over a month. I had been helping them remove trash and clean up the encampment, because that's a big part of my outreach, is helping these camps to clean up the trash, because it's a health issue. And there was a gentleman that I was walking down the path with there, and I just asked him, is there anyone else that I haven't met? So he led me to Lloyd. And Lloyd was way in the back, isolated by himself, and for good reason. He has a lot of significant health problems with his breathing. He can't really defend himself, and sometimes those encampments are quite dangerous. He's been hit over the head with a pipe, he's been attacked with a machete, and so he on purpose isolated himself, and that's probably the reason that the county outreach didn't even know he existed. And they didn't perhaps think to ask that one simple question, but it led me to Lloyd, and here we are today.
Yeah. And Lloyd had already been homeless for how many years at that point?
He had already been homeless for about 22 years. He had a loss of a significant family member. His father died. They were living together with his brother in a mobile home park, and his brother and him were then no longer, on just the two of them, able to pay the rent. Mm-hmm. So his brother could work and get more sustainable income than Lloyd with his disability, to provide housing for himself. So Lloyd basically ended up in his van, on the street, and then in the encampments.
That's amazing. So the big, fast forward to today, the big update for Lloyd is he now has housing, is what you're telling us, and it's Section 8 housing.
Right. So with Section 8 housing, this to me is somewhat of a miracle for both Lloyd and Ira, and that, I've been working with Lloyd, it's really almost just about 2 years exactly now, and he got that in 2 years, where there's many folks. So one of the individuals that we helped together, Chuck, she waited 10 years. So with the HUD voucher, if you're getting government assistance like disability, Social Security, or some type of income, what they require is 30% of that amount. is your contribution to the housing, and then the federal government pays the remainder of that. They have a limit, and it's right about $2,000 and they send people out to look for their own rentals, and they have to find it within those parameters, and once they do, then they will set that price at 30%. So in Lloyd's case, it's $390 a month.
And you're saying from application to obtaining the certificate of approval is about 2 years?
It was in Lloyd's case. That's not typical, but it was in his case. And, maybe just the timing of this new facility just being completed and open for these apartments and some other permanent housing residents being completed, that perhaps it sped it up. Now, there is a prioritization for housing. So there are many ways in which folks can kind of jump ahead of the list somewhat. And like in Lloyd's case, he has a severe physical disability and his age too. So he is a senior, he has a disability. So that does kind of help move you up the list for, other folks that may be younger, may not have a disability and things of that nature.
So on the high end, maybe 8 years, and as an example, our friend, female friend that we helped together, she was 8 years is what you said, right?
I think it was 10.
Oh, 10, okay.
Yeah, 10 years
10 years.
waited, yeah.
Yeah, so...
And that's more typical.
That's more typical, and that doesn't really respond to the immediate housing crisis that we have. So let's revisit that whole discussion just briefly. What do you think needs to happen to help these people who are in immediate crisis?
Well, there are things that the government is doing. So like, for example, Lloyd was able to get into Project Room Key. So that was using federal and state funds to provide more emergent temporary shelter. And what they were doing is putting them in motel rooms.
We did a video there last year as well, I think, and we saw like a vagabond inn with Lloyd. We looked around at his room, and how long did it take for him to get that?
That only took about 2 months. Once I took Lloyd to the One Stop, we got him connected there. He got into the Whole Person Care, which is a county program that helps folks that are having difficulty managing their health care. So he got into the Whole Person. They made a referral for him to get a county housing caseworker. So then they began that process. So, applications are filled out for, the HUD voucher and other possible permanent housing, offerings that are out there. I applied for him with the city of Ventura. They have a program also where they're providing some low-income subsidized housing as well. So there were many applications that were being put out by myself and then with the county and the caseworker from county.
How is Lloyd doing?
Lloyd is doing about the same. He is really a tough old bird. I mean, he really can't go from, his couch to the door without really being short of breath. So he's always short of breath. He's huffing and puffing. He has emphysema. He still smokes. That's not helping. So that's one of his major challenges. But thankfully, we're not talking about drugs and alcohol, and that could certainly complicate things quite a bit. But he's actually doing pretty well. I mean, he's very excited that he's got his own place now. We were able, really, within 4 days to fully furnish. And his apartment looks nice. I just can't wait to share those pictures. It's a bit of a mess now, how move-ins go. But he's real excited about that. I was able to secure him an electric wheelchair, which is healthcare insurance denied. They wouldn't even get him a bath shower chair. But a very kind person was selling an electric wheelchair on one of those social media sites. It didn't work, so she was struggling selling it. So I solicited her to give it to us, and bless her heart, she did. She gave us a $5,000 wheelchair, and I was able to fix it and put a couple new batteries in it for a couple $100, and that's just been the difference. Because you think of disabled folks often, mobility and the loss of use of their legs, but there's a lot of disabled folks like Lloyd. They really just can't breathe to walk and go any distance. So that wheelchair has given him the mobility. He can go to the store, and he's quite, the gadget man. He's like a MacGyver. So he fashioned a little basket on the front of it to hold his groceries, which I thought was ingenious. But he's tootling around in his electric wheelchair, and life's pretty good for Lloyd now.
I agree.
Well, I think the one thing that stands out to me is it really does take a village to help folks that are unhoused. If we just rely on the government to do everything, and the kind of attitude that I pay my taxes, that's what I've done to contribute, I think that leaves a lot of people out in the cold.
That's actually what I wanted to talk about, because one thing I like about my discussions with you, Doug, and what you're doing, and what you and I have agreed to do it together in the past, is just do the help that is needed.
Mm-hmm.
You take extraordinary risk to be able to give that help that is needed. So one of the things that I thought would be interesting is maybe we can try to give some tools in the form of information on this recording to people who might be interested in doing what you do, and the tools will be like, know in advance what are the risks that you're taking that they might be willing to take or not willing to take,
Mm-hmm.
in order to go approach these people and provide the type of help that you're providing.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think oftentimes homeless people are often characterized as very dangerous people. And in some cases that is true. I mean, in some cases, you're going to come across people that maybe they've got mental health issues or other issues that, trying to go and reach out, just a lay person, without a good understanding of how to interact in a more safe manner, and maybe go in a group or at least in pairs and that sort of thing. It's not for everyone. I don't recommend that people just kind of, as a first step, go out and do this kind of outreach and homeless advocacy to start. I think the most important step is do what you feel comfortable with, first of all, and educate yourself to do it right. Because a lot of people may have very good intentions, but may actually do things in a manner that doesn't foster, a good relationship with the homeless. Because remember, when you're homeless, you're exposed to many dangers, and you're exposed to many different elements. And there is a survival instinct that kind of comes in, and there's a protective nature. That's why some homeless people, they may seem like they're angry or they're standoffish, but what it really is they're attempting to defend themselves by saying, hey, don't mess with me or you're going to have some danger here. So it's a way in which, it's a mechanism in which they protect themselves. So for the average layperson that really has a heart to do things, the best step, Google. Find out what's going on locally in your area. Find out what charities and other churches and entities are operating in homeless issues, and find out where you fit in and you feel comfortable. It's kind of like going to college. You can go get a degree in anything to make a lot of money, but if you're not happy doing it, it's really not going to be sustainable or successful. So if you're going to do this of your own volition, take your own time, do it something that purely comes from your heart, that you feel a calling to do, and then pursue that. But do it in a way in which you educate yourself and arm yourself. First of all, keep yourself and your family safe, and then do it in an effective, appropriate manner.
One thought that came to mind while you were sharing that is, even if those people are not themselves dangerous, they attract, sometimes because of their addictions, possibly they attract others who might be dangerous. They might not even be living there, they might just be visiting for whatever business or not business that they have to come to the encampment. That's one thing that I remember you sharing with me. There were some drug dealers one time, and these were probably violent individuals that you actually had an interaction with that wasn't so positive. Even if you think that the people that you're visiting are safe, there's always the risk, because these are unsheltered people. They're left exposed and they're not protected. They don't have walls or any property rights for where they're at, so that they don't have that protection. So you're basically exposing yourself to everything that they're exposed to when you go there.
That is true, and unfortunately, there are elements within like these encampments and that environment that there's a lot of addiction, substance abuse issues, and so there are suppliers of those things And they're always not always the nicest people, we'll just put it that way. And there are dangers that are present. So, that's my caution to people, is it's not for everyone. It's my chosen calling. I've done international humanitarian work, and I've gone into places in Nicaragua that Nicaraguans won't go, So it's really not for everyone. But there really are a lot of very well-intended people that can do a lot more if they were given more information, more direction, and find out where they kind of fit in to the puzzle of solving homelessness. And we have a lot of less fortunate people that are falling through the cracks, they're suffering. And as a community, there's a lot of people with big hearts. They want to help. Americans in general are extremely generous. And like in Lloyd's case, within 4 days, I had his apartment by one single post on nextdoor.com, fully furnished his apartment, and it's lovely. And so people are willing. And sometimes they just need to have that pathway or someone to kind of direct and channel them in a way that they're comfortable with.
One thing I like about your work is you're prepared to help everybody. So you are looking for Lloyd, and that one person that actually you were willing to take all the way from homelessness to housing. You are starting with basic human needs given to everybody, regardless of their addiction, regardless of their willingness to obtain housing, regardless of the danger that they might have provided. You were bringing them water, sanitation, and a whole bunch of other things through a series of visits. So maybe you can talk about some of your approach, how you're trying to, you don't have to be willing to help everybody. You can do just some limited things and be very, very helpful.
That's an excellent point, because taking on a single person like Lloyd really wasn't the model for myself prior to that I was more broadly helping everyone in a more general sense. So, it was access to water, toilets, and sanitation like trash pickup. So I was looking at it in a more global sense of help to everyone in the encampment and doing outreach in that way in more of a global sense. But when Lloyd came along, that was just an opportunity for me to understand that I could make a huge difference in one person's life. And it really does take someone to commit and kind of go see it all the way through, like you said. See them all the way through to permanent housing, or whether they're able to work or get connected or get life skills, or, whatever that is needed to help put them in a better, safer place, make them a more productive member of our community and our society. So that was just an opportunity that was presented before me, and so I shifted my focus and energies more on a single person, still doing outreach in general. But I think sometimes these opportunities come along, and kind of in your heart or deep down, you kind of know that that's where you're being led to, put your energy. So, follow your heart, use your mind, but sometimes it does change and shift, much like my international work, by just listening to them when I'm asking the question, what do you need? What can I do better to address the more urgent needs or the more critical needs that you have? In every village we went, it was one thing over and over: dental, dental, dental. So if you listen to people and not just help in the way you want to be Santa Claus and handing out things and feeling good, but listen to them, what they want, what they need. And if you do that, you're going to be much more effective.
That reminds me of other discussions that you and I have had, and the help that you provide, and also that we were able to do for this female friend. A lot of times what we're doing is bridging gaps. Tons of resources are available for these people, and sometimes as volunteers or people who want to help, we just assume that they have everything they need available to them. All they have to do is just go look for it. But that's not always true. Sometimes there are gaps that need to be bridged. For example, the one example that you and I share together is helping a lady with a lease deposit. She didn't have the funds for her to get the agreement because she didn't have any money to pay the deposit that was required. She didn't know where to find it. I didn't know where to find that kind of help, so we just agreed to put up the money. and she paid it back, and it was a very positive transaction. Other gaps that you bridge for people are with, for example, Lloyd. He needed to bridge lots of gaps. The help was available, but Lloyd wasn't the type of person that was going to just go get the help. You were bridging those gaps. What are some of the other gaps that maybe somebody from the community or volunteer might be able to bridge for people?
I think that one of the gaps is just having that person ready to accept help. And so sometimes it's just having a connection with a person where you're treating them with dignity and respect, that they can see the value in themselves, that they're a person that's worthy of having assistance come their way. So sometimes people are just in a dark place because they've been homeless, they've been maybe poorly treated or lived under very stressful, bad conditions, that they stop seeing themselves as a person of worth and value. So I think one of the gaps is psychological, because no matter how much we have it in our hearts to help people, unless they're ready themselves to participate actively and do their part, then it's not going to succeed no matter how much we want it for them. So the other thing is identifying the individual needs for that person and then seeking out resources that may help fill that gap. So it's got to be tailored in a more individual way. And when you're running government programs, just by the very nature of trying to deal with such a massive problem with so many people, it kind of becomes more of a cookie cutter, approach. And just by the very nature of some of these government agencies, that they have certain limitations. So I think it's just identifying those needs, much like in Nicaragua. We identified a need for dental and we shifted to that, and it made it a highly successful mission. So, and it's not always going to succeed. So for every success story, like I count this as really a success story, you're going to have those that don't end up having the positive result you want, and just know that going in. It's like the starfish story with a little boy on the coast, throwing starfish back in the ocean. And the guy says, well, what are you doing, kid? You can't save all these. So he says, I know, but I can save this one.
To me, this goes to relationships.
Yeah.
If we can be willing to extend a hand and have a relationship with somebody, go see them again a second time after you've helped them one time, that probably is a big step forward to bridging gaps and helping. And I think the overall message here, and this is one reason why I appreciate you, Doug, is you love your neighbor. And this is something that I think that all of our community, we can all benefit, whether we're on this end or on the other end, to loving our neighbors.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, there's a stigma and there's a generalization that's often made about the homeless population based on some bad behavior and activities that do go on. So I think we have to understand that no matter how badly it may have affected you personally or your community or your neighborhood in wrestling with the homeless issue and some of these bad behaviors, that these are human beings. And given the right direction and given somebody that shows empathy and compassion to them, you can turn a hardened heart around, and you can actually make them a person that's willing not only to accept help, but to extend help to another. Now, the other gentleman that got housing, I had reached out to him. We had developed a relationship. So when I was helping move things into Lloyd's, I had to park my car and my trailer in an area that there's a lot of homeless people there. There's a lot of car break-ins, there's a lot of things that go on. Without even asking him, he was looking after the car, making sure it was safe. He was opening the door for us. So he was doing things based on that relationship without even being asked. And that to me is powerful. That once you establish a trust and a relationship, then those people that maybe they were not in a position to even help themselves much, now he was willing to help us.
How does it work, Doug, when they receive the voucher, the certificate of approval for housing? What do they do next?
What they do is they themselves must go out in a search for a rental. And so once they find a rental that meets the parameters for the cap and what that rent can be, then they have to go back to their case manager and say, yes, I found a place. And then that negotiation will go on where they will accept this person as a renter. They'll accept that it's under the HUD, program, and that. So that is a challenge, and that's one of the situations Lloyd found himself in when he got a rental under HUD, and they did some improvements and remodeling, and he had to move out for that. So when he was going to move back in, they had raised the rent, and because they had done improvements, and HUD said, no, we're not going to pay that. And so he went out searching for a place, and 22 years later he was still unhoused because he was never able to find that place. So that's a huge challenge. That's where some of these local charities can help, and being persistent and proactive with these county caseworkers, because they are overwhelmed. I mean, they've got a caseload of 30 to 40 clients. I mean, they're lucky in a month to see every client, which in most cases they can't even see down their whole list a client once a month. So it's a huge challenge. And not everyone has the skill set and tools to go out and do an effective search. So that's where like a homeless advocate, a local charity, a church can help kind of bridge that gap and give them that help up, that aid that they need in doing it. Not doing everything for them, but kind of giving some direction and some information where they can make a more effective search and find their place.
Well, that is really bridging the gap, because in Lloyd's case, he needed transportation to go look at a place possibly. He needed access to the internet to do some searching around for whatever units were available, and I'm sure you were helping him with all that.
Well, when Lloyd went out at that time, I hadn't met Lloyd at that time. So in this search, he was aided with his caseworker.
Oh, okay.
So in this case, he was aided by the caseworker, which helped him find that place.
So what did the caseworker do? Did the caseworker take him around to a couple different units or do the internet search for those units?
So in this case, the caseworker was very proactive and actually found him this place, and then contacted me because he was having difficulty getting in touch with Lloyd, that hey, he got his voucher, he's got this place. So in that case, the caseworker was able to do that for Lloyd, which Lloyd would have had difficulty. They do provide bus passes and cheap transportation and things of that nature, but relying upon buses and transit systems to get you out and about, and with his breathing problems, it was a big challenge, and it really can prolong that process and lengthen it, because how many places can you see with the local schedules of the bus and things of that nature. So in this case, he was quite fortunate. He had an excellent caseworker that really, in this case, did it for him. But just as a rule, people are sent out on their own to go look.
Yeah, and not all the people looking are going to be capable of
right.
finding. Well, thanks for listening to us today. I hope everybody has had a little bit of additional information that maybe they can use to do some outreach and be a homeless advocate like Doug. What else would you want to say?
Well, just thank you for your time and attention, and just taking your time to listen to a topic that is affecting every community. We are in a homeless crisis. We know housing is a real issue in terms of shortage and cost. The cost of everything's going up, and that's putting a lot of people that you wouldn't consider at risk for homeless are now much more at risk. So it really affects almost everyone, or people that you know, or parts of your family. So thank you for this time to listen to our story, and how, just as community leaders and folks in our community that care for others that are less fortunate, that you can do something, you can be involved if you empower yourself and follow your heart and answer your call to serve.